Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive struggle that, honestly, almost every single one of us faces at some point. You know that feeling of constantly sabotaging your own goals and wondering how you can finally stop relying on just raw, exhausting willpower to actually get things done? Well, if you've ever felt completely drained trying to force yourself to stick to a new habit, you are absolutely in the right place. The source material we're digging into today completely flips the script on self-discipline, so let's see how it changes literally everything we know about motivation.
Okay, let's dive into this. It's a really frustrating paradox, right? Why do we constantly trade our biggest, most meaningful goals for a quick reward? Like you set a goal to get fit, but then you end up choosing the couch in a movie, or you plan to write a book, but you wind up scrolling through social media for an hour instead. Now, our text makes it super clear that this is not because you're lazy. It's not because you're a bad person. It's simply because human beings are biologically and psychologically wired to prefer comfort and immediate relief over future benefits. Our goals are rooted in what we want for the future, sure, but our daily actions, they're hijacked by what we crave right now. Now, in the exercises for gradually building willpower, the text introduces this brilliant little mnemonic to help us wrap our heads around this conflict. It's a reminder to avoid trading your long-term goals for those quick, immediate rewards. The rule really centers around our main internal antagonist, the pig, and that stands for personal instant gratification. The pig is basically that part of you that craves the immediate reward. It's that little voice whispering, hey, just one more cookie, or come on, you can start that project tomorrow. You see, the pig absolutely doesn't care about your long-term success. It doesn't care about your health or your ultimate happiness. It only cares about feeling good in the present moment, avoiding any sort of discomfort, and, protecting your immediate ego. And that brings us to the absolutely core instruction from the source material. Do not feed the pig. Honestly, this is a massive mindset shift. Every single time you feed the pig, you are actively sacrificing your long-term goals. Seriously, when you give in to that craving for a quick rush of comfort, sure, you might feel a tiny bit of temporary relief, but you're trading away the person you actually want to become. Starving the pig means accepting just a little bit of short-term discomfort so you can reap massive long-term rewards later. But as you probably know, fighting the pig with sheer force isn't quite as easy as it sounds.
So that brings us to section 1, the 800-pound gorilla, which represents your unconscious mind.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens inside our heads. Just imagine you're riding an 800-pound gorilla. You can shout all you want that you want to go left, but if that gorilla decides it wants to go right, guess what? You're going right. Our conscious commitments literally do not matter if our vastly powerful unconscious mind wants comfort instead. The text actually outlines how this internal battle plays out with this really fascinating cast of characters. So you have the rational decision maker who wants to do the right thing, right? But they are constantly hijacked by the instant gratification monkey. That's another manifestation of our pig who only wants what is fun and easy right now. And they happily dump all the consequences onto future you, who doesn't even exist yet. The only thing that scares the monkey away is the panic monster, who wakes up when a deadline gets terrifyingly close. The author actually shares this wild personal anecdote about this, admitting to failing calculus 4 times in college just because the instant gratification monkey completely took over to avoid the anxiety of studying. Crazy, right? Moving on to section 2, willpower is a muscle and how it drains over time.
So if we can't just magically wish the gorilla and the monkey away, we have to realize something crucial. Willpower isn't an innate personality trait. It actually acts exactly like a physical muscle. It requires energy and it fatigues with heavy use. Because willpower drains over time, relying on brute force discipline is just a losing battle. And this is especially true when you fall into what the source calls the HALTS states. HALTS stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or sick. When you're experiencing literally any of these physical or emotional states, your willpower muscle is actively being drained. Think about it. If you try to make a major decision or force yourself to do something incredibly difficult while you're hungry or exhausted, your inner 800-pound gorilla is almost guaranteed to take over and just demand comfort.
Which naturally leaves us with a pretty massive question. If willpower inevitably burns out and our unconscious mind is really that powerful, how do we bypass the 800-pound gorilla to actually get things done? How do we stop feeding the pig without just completely exhausting ourselves in the process? Well, the text provides a highly actionable psychological solution that actually doesn't rely on being tough or just grinding it out. This takes us to section 3, ridiculously small habits, and how to bypass your resistance. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it frames the solution.
You see, when we set massive, life-changing goals, our unconscious mind totally panics. It sees all that effort, the discomfort, the fear of failure, and it immediately triggers procrastination. But look at these actual examples straight from the text. Instead of committing to a grueling hour-long workout, you just commit to doing exactly one push-up. Eat one carrot. Wash exactly one dish. Or write for just 3 minutes. These stupidly small micro-commitments slip completely under the radar of our finely tuned survival instincts. They don't trigger that fear that wakes up the instant gratification monkey. Because they're so small, your unconscious gorilla doesn't even bother resisting them. But here's the magic. Action inspires effort. Once you start washing that one dish or doing that one single push-up, you're already in motion, and you will almost always do more. Let's head into Section 4, Tools for Lasting Discipline, focusing on equipping yourself with tools for success. To build sustainable discipline, we really have to move away from self-punishment and learn to outsmart our own resistance. One of the absolute most powerful tools detailed in the source is a science-backed mental strategy called the WOOP method. It stands for wish, outcome, obstacle, and plan. So first, you state your wish, and you visualize the outcome. But the real magic happens in those next 2 steps. Instead of just relying on positive thinking, you actively identify this specific obstacle that usually derails you. Then you make an if-then plan to beat it. For example, you might say, if I feel too tired after work, then I will just put on my gym clothes and do 5 minutes. By anticipating the obstacle and planning for it in advance, you completely neutralize the pig before it even gets a chance to sabotage you. Let's move to and see how this builds on everything we've talked about. When we put this all together, the contrast is super clear. Relying purely on willpower is a short-term, totally exhausting strategy. It's kind of like holding your breath until you finally gasp for air and just binge on a bad habit. Building self-discipline, however, is habitual and sustainable. It uses smart strategies like those ridiculously small habits and the WOOP method to completely bypass resistance. It replaces the misery of self-criticism with clever planning, which allows you to steadily build the life you want without constantly fighting this exhausting war inside your own head. So the crucial point is this hard-hitting realization from the source. Listen to this. You can suffer the pain of discipline, or you can suffer the pain of regret. Discomfort is just an unavoidable part of the process. Starving the pig and choosing discipline? Yeah, it might feel slightly uncomfortable in the moment, for sure. But that discomfort is brief. On the other hand, giving in to the pig brings temporary comfort, but guarantees the heavy, lingering pain of regret later on. The choice of which pain you endure is entirely up to you.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. And I want to leave you with a provocative question to really think about today. What ridiculously small habit will you start right now to starve the pig? Remember, it doesn't need to be monumental. It just needs to be small enough to bypass that 800-pound gorilla in your mind. Pick your one push-up, your one paragraph, or your one glass of water, and take that very first micro step right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.